introduction. Welcome everyone here. Welcome everyone at home. Like Danny said, I'm going to talk a little about open access publishing and about licenses. But what I also want to do is, because this is a special setting here, is to bring this into the FAIR field. So to talk about open access and FAIR and how fair is open access. And of course, I'd like to have some input from you on this topic, because I consider you the experts here. So thank you for that in advance. Well, let me start with this press publication 2 weeks ago. It was from the Dutch universities. Maybe you saw it. It's a publication about open access in the Netherlands. And what they talked about is that already 82% of the scientific publications in the Netherlands is open access. So basically, this means we are already in open access heaven. And well, we're there almost. What do you think? Well, before we go further, a little introduction and a small disclaimer. First of all, well, Danny already introduced me. I'm a member of the library support team, as is Danny, as of now, as of this month. But there are also other colleagues in the room, and I saw also some of my colleagues in Zoom. I'm involved in scholarly communication, in open access and publishing at Maastricht University, and also in some national developments like NPOS for scholarly communication, like UKB, that is the Dutch libraries who work together on open access, but also on open science, but also the open access journal browser. You might have used it already. I will come to it later. And as of last month, the Maastricht University Press, where we also offer services to publish your books in open access, in Diamond open access. Then a disclaimer. Well, I know my way around in open access, like Danny said, and I know a little bit about copyright and licensing, but I'm not an expert. I'm an advocate, and I'm also not a preacher. So bear with me if I do not the answer. But if you have an answer, I will ask my colleagues and try to find out and to help you further. Also, I'm not a FAIR expert, like I mentioned, so I'm very excited here today to talk with you about open access in the context of FAIR. And I hope that we can help each other further on that path to open science. Well, today's storyline, first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about open access publishing at Maastricht University and in the Netherlands at the moment. Then we go into some publishing strategies like the golden route, the green route, and also how to, what steps to take when you set up an open access publishing strategy. And then we dive into open access and FAIR. And then I have FAIR with lowercase and capitals, because that are two aspects of open access publishing. And then I'll try to take with you some steps forward to see how we can make open access more fair in the future. Is there something in this lineup that is missing? Do you have other things you'd like to discuss today? Or can we leave that to the discussion at the end? Then the goodie bag today, this presentation will be shared. So I'll share the presentation with links to all the products, all the services, all the tools we talk about. Then we have a link to the open access portal. And new since of yesterday or the day before yesterday, we also have a group in the new employee intranet about sharing outputs, open access, publishing, and more of that nature. All right, then open access at Maastricht University. Maastricht University, we are not at 82% yet. According to the criteria of the Netherlands universities, we are at 76% now. And here in this graph that is taken from our research intelligence dashboard that is developed by the university library for the faculties, you can see the growth of open access in our university. Well, what you see here is how we in the Netherlands divide the open access play field. What you see here, first of all, we have gold open access, and you see, well, a steep growth of gold open access, not only in percentage, because this is a percentage of the 100%, but also in absolute numbers. This is also booming. What you see here also is the growth of the hybrid open access publications. So that means that it's open access, but published in a formally subscription journal or platform who also offer open access publishing. And most of the deals we as a library have, not all, but most of the deals are focused on that kind of outlets. So journals and publishers, we have a read, or we had before a read subscription with, and with whom we made arrangements to flip that to free open access publishing possibilities. But on the other hand, you see also almost the same level of open access publications is in fully gold outlets. So that's almost in 2021, almost 30% of our publications. And the fully gold outlets that are only, well, not only, but most of them are APC-based outlets. So often there is no discount. So that means that you, the researchers, pay in some way for these publications via your research budget or via your funder. And those APCs are scattered around the universities. At this moment, we do not have a lot of insights about that. Then you see the green open access field, and you see that you see no growth path here. But if you look at the different years, you will see that every year when we go back, this chart has a smaller part of green, because this means all the green publications formerly were closed publications, and they are all, over the years, opened up via Taverne. The people who participate in Taverne, they give us the right for them to open up their closed publications in green open access. So this means those publications come available via our institutional repository. Then you see also the bronze part of open access, and bronze is not counted by the national universities, Dutch universities, as open access, because this is free access given by the publishers. So there is access to it by the public, but there is no license, and there is also no way of sustainability, because you have no idea if this publication is still available in a year. We are not allowed to archive it in our archives, and there is also no reuse license. But on the other hand, everyone can access it, so it is readable to the public. Then you see a shrinking part of closed access, and that is the part that is still published behind a paywall. Yeah, Diamond is not counted here as a separate route or a separate goal. I'll come to Diamond later on, because Diamond is a business model of gold open access. So when you look at gold open access, you have the APC-based way of publishing gold open access, and you have the non-APC way of publishing gold open access. So that means the cost of the publishing houses or the journals are paid in another way, but the result is also called open access for the publications and the results. Okay, so we now go a little into those routes. We have the gold only, the APC model that I talked about. We have the hybrid subscription and APC models. We have the diamond models. That's the non-APC model, like we just talked about. Then on the other hand, we see that the funders, they have strict requirements toward those outlets. And if you are, for instance, if your research is funded by a coalition as funder like NWO or Horizon or so, they have created a journal checker tool. There's a link at the end where you can find out about every journal, whether it is compliant with their rules about open with research output funded by them. On the other hand, in the Netherlands, we see that also here at the UN that APCs are research costs. So always check before you submit about the cost of open access, because the library helps you, and that is the next one. We help you with discounts, but we cannot give and arrange discounts on all the outlets and all the publishers and all the journals. So if we cannot help you with a discount, so please check before you submit your manuscript, then your research project has to pay for the APC. So also before you submit, check with your research lead or with your faculty if there is funding for APC, because especially when you submit to a gold-only journal, then it can be that after 3 months, after 6 months, you are accepted to find out that you don't have the money to pay for the APC, for instance. When you submit to a hybrid journal, then there's always escape route, because you only have to decide about open access or subscription access after acceptation. So if there is no way to fund the APC and there is no mandate by a funder, then you can always choose the subscription route and then make your publication open access after publishing via the green route. Okay. Then we go to the green route, so that is via the trusted repositories like the institution repository of Maastricht University. We have at this moment 2 ways to make your publication open access after publishing. That is the author version. Usually that is the accepted author version, so the author version after peer review, but it also can be another best option, depending also on what the publisher allows. And we have a service here, Sherpa Romeo, where you can find out about the green possibilities of a paywall subscription. And last but not least, there is also a way to make a author version immediate open access with a CC BY license, and that is when you use the rights retention strategy. That means that when you submit your manuscript to a publisher, that you use the magic language saying that there is already a claim to the author version with a CC BY license by your funder or by your institution. Not many people do that on their own, but what you see is that it gets organized. All the coalition as funders already demand this from their projects when you publish in a journal that is not compliant, for instance. And they also already let all the publishers know that if they publish articles that are funded by their funds, they have to allow this. But we will give more information about this later on this year, because in the Netherlands, we are just starting up with this. And then the other way, which is already a year or 3 working now, is opening up the published version after publication via the Taverne service. Not sure if you all of you already opted in for Taverne. Yes, okay. This means that no matter what you arrange with the publisher, by law here in the Netherlands, you are allowed to open up your your published work 6 months after publication via a repository, a non-commercial repository. So ResearchGate or so is not okay. But you can use our service because then we do it for you and it is legal. So if you opt in for Taverne, there's a link in the slide. If you didn't do it already, then my colleagues from the repository team will make your publications that are not open access open. Also, on our portal, you'll find information about the steps to take when you think about the publishing strategy. I'm not going too deep into this. You can read it on the website, but I think the most important steps I highlighted here, and it is be aware of the open access policy directive of your funder before you add proposal, and make sure to find out if there is a APC budget at your funder, because independent from the arrangements we have as a library, the funders who demand you to publish open access also have money to publish open access. So if you make a claim for those budgets, you are sure that you can publish in the outlet that is best for your publication. And then at submission, always check the journal browser. And this is also a thing we have problems with often. Make sure who is the corresponding author, and that the corresponding author can correspond with the publisher the whole time of the time between submission and publication. What you see is that many times people think the corresponding author is the first author, but that's not true. In perspective of the publisher, the corresponding author is the author that is the person that is doing the work or has the money and is corresponding with the publisher. And in some of the arrangements, you have to use the affiliation email as a corresponding author, and you have to be available during the process as a corresponding author. So if you are a PhD and you are leaving Maastricht University during your publication process and your email is not working anymore after the day after you leave, I think there is still now a grace period for a couple of months, but if your email is not working, then you will not know what is happening. So, or you are not eligible to make use of the discount. So, a good strategy is if you are publishing and you are a PhD or thinking about leaving Maastricht University and you want to make use of the discounts, make sure you have a co-author who can be the corresponding author for the publishers. Well, okay. Now about what about the 82% open access? Yeah. Are there any questions at the moment? No. Okay. Okay. Well, then we are good, and we move on. Well, first of all, 82% open access in the Netherlands. What you see at this moment, and also the way they create those metrics, is that the focus is on APC-based peer-reviewed journal articles. So that is the pond they are, you say that in English? The pond they are fishing in? No, that's what they take into consideration. And then also there is a focus on access at the moment, not on, well, less on reuse and not on interoperability and not on findability. And what you see that is here, well, what you see is we look at access, but also Taverne is counted. And for Taverne, there is no reuse at all. But still, some of the universities take Taverne as a very important way to get to 100% open access. So from a perspective of open science, you would say, well, is this really the best way to bet on the horses? So how can we make this more fair and fair? Well, first of all, fair with lower cost. When we look at diversity, what you see is that we made an arrangement in the Netherlands to move on from peer-reviewed articles to more, not to all yet, but to more research output. So as from next year, we will also take into account other kinds of output like books, chapters, conference proceedings. Sorry, and hopefully later on we will take also into account other kinds of output. Then with regards to inclusivity, what you see is that we moved from a paywall to a playwall. We used to have a serials crisis where everything was behind a paywall and everything was going more expensive and more expensive for libraries. And with a change to APC-based open access, you see that now only the very rich universities can afford to pay for open access. So what you see, if you're not affiliated, if you're not funded, if you live in Africa, or if you live in South America, so you do not have the means to pay these APCs. So what you see is that we move from a paywall to a playwall. And what we hope to do is to move to real open science APC, and that is to also remove the paywalls or to set realistic APCs. That is also something that is in the NPOS program 2030. And then last but not least is sustainability. Well, we moved from a serials crisis now to APC caps. And what we would like to go is to move to non-APC. Then about FAIR, the acronym FAIR. So that is what you all are the experts in. I already mentioned that the focus now for open access was mainly on accessibility and reusability, a little less. So I will try to make clear how we think about moving to FAIR, and hopefully you also have ideas about that. But first of all, accessibility. So that is maybe a no-brainer because this is the focus of open access for 10 years already. First of all, follow the open access publishing basics. There is a link where you can find everything about how to publish open access. Okay, select the best outlet for your work. Also, here is a link to all selection criteria you can think about when you select an outlet, not only open access, also things like predatory publishers, things like impact factor, things like audience, etc., etc. If you follow the link, you get to a page, and we also have a workshop about that, 2-hour workshop, where you can enroll for every month, where we dive into that further. Then this is also important, comply with the requirements of your funder, check the APC discounts via the library, we already talked about that, and participate in Taverna. And this one is also something I do not see often enough. Also share and make different versions of your publications and link them together. So people who find something they cannot use are linked to other publications they can read and can use, or are more fit for their situation. Then with regards to reusability, then we come to the licensing part also. First of all, retain your copyrights. So, make sure that you not sign over your copyright to a publisher, because from that moment on, publisher is, well, the owner of your work. and he or she gets to say what is happening with it. So retain your copyright. Make sure that when you sign for open access, that you retain your copyright. But also, if you do not publish open access, try to find out if you can retain your copyright. So like the rights retention strategy disclosed. Then think about the necessary and wanted reuse of your work. We get a lot of questions about CC BY, for instance, and what it means, and what is the best CC BY variable to use. Because maybe you know CC BY is, well, you give a license to people reading and using your work, but you can limit the license by adding, for instance, NC, no commercial use, ND, no derivatives, SA, share alike, or a combination of those. And well, before you do, you have to know what works best for you, and what is the demand of your funder, for instance, because Coalition S funders, they allow only CC BY and no further limitations. But if you're writing a book, maybe you do not want someone else to make a other version of the book and then sell it on Amazon, for instance. So maybe you would like to use then the CC BY ND variable, so no derivatives. So that is something you have to keep in mind when you give a license to others to use your work. Then this is also something Danny mentioned, make your license explicit. And so well, you can think about a license and you can say to the publisher, this is the license I want to have, but make sure that you make your license explicit, not only in the metadata, but in a way that it is in the metadata that not only humans, but also machines can read it, and make it also explicit in the objects themselves, so that it is on paper, because the objects themselves, they get also scattered around. When Google Scholar indexes a repository, it indexes not only the metadata, but it indexes also PDFs separately. So when I get a PDF and there's no mentioning about where it is from, whether there is a license, I don't know. I cannot use it. So make your license explicit in the metadata and in the objects. And if not gold, make sure that you share then other versions, like the Taverne version, like the like the author manuscript, but also data sets, other excerpts, etc., and link them together. Then we go to findability. That is something that, okay, that I think is very overlooked, because we do our best to make everything green open access. But what do you do when you hit a paywall? Are you going to look for the green open access version? How do you do that? Or do you go head over to Sci-Hub and try to find it there? I see a lot of nodding faces, so I think this is but also the other way around. Can others find your alternative publications? And so if you publish with a publisher and it's not open access, but you do your best to have a green version or another version, how do others know? How can they find it? So that is, I think, something you as a researcher, together with us, of course, have to take this into consideration. First of all, to find it, always use a browser plugin like Lean Library or like Unpaywall. I have a link to Lean Library here in the presentation, because Lean Library is our Maastricht University branded version of Unpaywall. And what is handy about this tool is that it is Unpaywall plus access to the licensed material we have as Maastricht University. So if you're not on the Maastricht University network, or if we have a license not with a publisher but with a vendor, and you hit a paywall, Lean Library will take you immediately to the licensed version of that publication. And if there is no licensed publication, then it will take you to a green version of it, if available. So this is something, well, you can use yourself, but also tell others who are looking for academic information to use a tool like that. Also, know how search machines work. For instance, many people use Google Scholar to find information, and what Google Scholar does is they bring all the versions they find together, but they hide those versions. So what you see usually is the first version, the version of the publisher. And when you click on that, well, probably you will hit a paywall. But there, right beneath, in the right beneath corner, there is also a link, versions of this publication. If you click it open, you also see the versions in repositories, etc. So then this will take you to a green version. So this is also a good way to find green open access. And for other strategies to find information, we have also a page on our website where you can find other strategies to, well, to alternatively find the full text. Yeah, and this is, I already mentioned that earlier, but this is something that is very important. Is always link your versions together, or get to a page of versions, for instance. So you can use Pure for that. If you have a publication in Pure, they list the DOI, so the published version, but they also can list other versions with that document. So you get kind of a document of versions then. You can also list your data set there. You can also list a link to something. So you bring all the versions of your document together. So that helps people to find your information. And then we come to the last one of the FAIR acronym, interoperability. And that is, well, the main thing here with regards to research output is to facilitate operability between the different silos. Now, with silos, you have the repositories, you have the publishers, all the databases where your information is. But how can we get those this information together, and how can we make sure that we also can build new services upon those information? Well, what we can do here is to pay extra attention to the metadata and the descriptions of your output. So not go with the least option, so fill out your name and the title, but try to fill out all the optional information and descriptions that will help to bring all your output from different silos, etc., together. For instance, always make sure that for objects you use the DOI, use ISSN, use ISBN, all those standardized identifiers that make sure that if it is in multiple silos, that people and machine can bring those together. Also with people, do not just mention the name of a person, but use an identifier. Always use an ORCID or use something else. I see a lot of authors, a lot of scholars, also from Maastricht University, who still have no ORCID. They don't use it. They don't see no use for it. They don't use it when they send in their manuscript. They don't use it when they list their output in Pure. They don't connect Pure with ORCID. Okay, but if you want to be open science-minded, make sure you use also your identifiers for people. Also for organizations and affiliations. I see the most creative names of affiliations in databases. That's nice, but use an indexed version of that affiliation, like for instance a ROR identifier or Ringgold identifier. There is still no, like ORCID and DOI, there is still not one identifier of organizations at the moment that we use altogether. So I hope this is something we can make a decision on in the next coming period, that we also can use, can look for everything from an organization or an affiliation. Also projects and grants. this is also missing from the metadata. There are many publications, but we cannot find all the publications from a certain project. So also fill out the ideas about your project and grants, and also things like links to the data sets, links to models, links to software, add that to the metadata. So everything gets linked together. And that is something we can try to facilitate, but you have to make it work. And then use the right tools. For instance, Pure. Pure is our own CRIS, so a current research information system. And this used to be a system just for bookkeeping. But what you see now is that Pure has a very, very broad metadata template where you can fill out everything about your outputs, not only about publications, also about data sets, also about projects, etc. And then this data set is not staying within Pure, within that one silo, but the metadata of Pure gets harvested every day by other services like Google Scholar, like Unpaywall, but also by ORCID. So if you put your information in a rich metadata template in Pure, this will also be harvested by ORCID and from there also to other services. So this is something you can do to make your output more interoperable. And of course, not only use Pure, but also check ORCID, Google, and other services if you have a personal account there about the metadata of your publications. Can you enrich those data? And that is very helpful. Well, to end. I try to set the publishing strategies, or to make the publishing strategies into a table, and to compare it with FAIR and FAIR. And my conclusion is that FAIR on the left side, with the capitals here, is when you go more gold, it can be more fair, and when you go more green, it can be more fair with the small letters. But we also have diamond, and I think from my perspective, this is where we should focus on the coming years if we want to make open access also part of important part of open science. Well, the steps towards fair open access. Make open access a mean for open science, and not just a target or a single metric for open access success. 82%, whoa, almost there. Now make it a real component of open science. Also, of course, make sure that recognizing and rewards takes into account scholars that make their output really fair open access. And of course, make recognize and reward open access to make science more open, which means also allocate funds to diamond open. That was it from my part. Okay. Well, thank you.
Want to learn more about the open science movement and FAIR? Find our next events below.